Hi, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining us today for what is actually our second webinar with the ICMA group. My name is Beverly Crandon. I'm the founder of a company called ad-ition. We deal with digital strategy. But so far in this round of webinars, we've been working with your group, your members of the ICMA, and talking about mobile. Our topic today, a bit of a long title, Consumer Content Habits and What They Mean for Mobile Classified Content Producers. You know, we focus on classifieds here in the title, but as we go through the content, you'll notice that some of the content sets and some of the points that we talk about when it comes to how consumers are using mobile and mobile content are applicable not just to the classified streams of your business, but also to, you know, if you've got a directory product, which I know many of you do, or if you've got a group buying product, which I know many of you do as well, you'll find that there are some similarities when we talk about mobile and how mobile can be used across these different streams. So I'm hoping today you'll be able to grab a couple of content sets here that can apply to different parts of your business. With that being said, let's just jump right into it and get started. Now, as I mentioned before, this is our second webinar around mobile that we've done with this group. Our first one was HTML5 versus native mobile apps, and you know what each of them mean. And we gave you a couple of ways to figure out which solution would best suit you. Now, I probably did this in a bit of a backwards order, and we should have done this particular webinar first and then talked about solutions after. In this webinar today, we're going to go through a whole bunch of things that will allow you to understand what your overall product should look like. And then once you understand that, then you move into what should the solution or the development solution be for me? Is it HTML5 or native? However, because the webinars were done so closely in range with each other, I think we're still okay. And if you weren't able to join that last webinar, I do believe it's on the ICMA website. You'll be able to reference that and go from there and kind of couple these two together. So this is why we've got the chicken and the egg depiction here. You know, what came first? Do we talk about the content or solutions and so on? So as I mentioned before, today we're going to talk about content, and from this conversation you'll be able to then figure out what your product set should look like and then go forward to look at the development solutions. So in detail, we'll talk about mobile user activity, what people are using their smartphones for. We'll talk about what also engages them and how to make sure your mobile app can engage. There's a statistic, and we talk about it later on in this webinar. There's a statistic out there that says 1 in 4 or 25% of the mobile apps that are downloaded are never used after that point of download. So we want to make sure that our mobile apps are set so they engage people and encourage people to come back to use your app. And, of course, word-of-mouth syndication. They tell friends about your application. So engaging someone is going to be a very big thing for us. We don't want to be a part of that statistic. We'll talk a bit about design. A lot of people feel that because they can design a website that they can then move forward and very safely design a mobile application. And design for mobile is different, and we'll talk about that. When you take things into context and how people are going to be using your application, you'll understand then what we mean when we say the design for mobile really does take some thought. You really got to think about your end user and how they're going to be interacting with your property or mobile property. And then, of course, after we talk about those things, we'll talk a bit about, you know, so what would an ideal classified product look like, knowing that this is how people are using their smartphones. Now, a bit of a story. I was on site at a client location a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to one of the VPs, and they are in the process right now of forming out their mobile strategy, building out their application. And one of the things that the VP was saying is that, you know, he was a little amiss because he felt they were so far behind the 8 ball in terms of getting their mobile application to market. But one of the things that I will say, and I'm showing you this graph or this depiction for a specific reason. As we can see here, the gray represents smartphone penetration for global mobile users, and the red bar represents how many mobile subscribers there are worldwide. As you can see, there's a huge difference between smartphone penetration and who our mobile subscribers are, which means then there's still a ramp that's happening, continuing to happen for smartphone adoption. What this means is you're not behind the 8 ball if you're starting today, or you're not behind the 8 ball if you're taking a good look at the application you put out and trying to refine it so it's far more specific to your user base. You've still got some time, not a lot of time, mind you. It's important to kind of get out to market now with your mobile application, given with, what's happening with how we are now so interweaved with our smartphones and how our smartphones have become an actual part of our lives. But this graph is to show, have no fear. We've still got some time. There's a bit of a ramp happening. What we're going to see is, even though it took us, probably about 3 years to kind of get to the great penetration here, you're going to see that penetration or adoption rate grow exponentially over the next year. So you've got a couple of months really to kind of figure this stuff out. And that's what I would encourage everybody to do, is sit down first, instead of rushing to market, sit down first and map out your mobile strategy. What does that mobile roadmap look like for your organization? And build accordingly. Build according to a plan is what I would say. We've got some time to do that. Now, some of you on this call may be saying, hey, in my marketplace, the penetration is much different. We're far more advanced. We're in Canada, we're in the United States, or we're in parts of Europe, and our client base is far more advanced when it comes to smartphone adoption. And I think, yes, if I was to take those geographies and do this particular graph, we may see that gray line would be a larger part of that overall penetration, but it's still not going to be as large as one would think. This particular table that I'm showing you here just kind of gives you a view as you break down the geographies. And we took one simple thing. We took one simple usage set of a smartphone, which is browsing the web. And what you see here is the percentage of web traffic that comes from an actual smartphone. And as you can see, it's quite low when you take a look at overall page views, mobile page views. It's quite low when you compare it to what's happening with the rest of the tools or tool sets that one will use to search the web. So, yes, I agree. In some countries, your smartphone adoption may be higher, but it's still not as high as you think in terms of having the lion's share. What we are seeing now, though, over the past, I would probably say 14 months or so, is that, not even that long, probably the past 9 months or so, is that the shipments of smartphones are now finally exceeding the shipments of feature phones. So as I said before in that previous slide, the ramp is going to be quite fast, quite exponential, faster than we've ever seen, I think, before when it comes to smartphone adoption. But so we've got some time, and it's not just because we've got some third world markets included in here. I think it applies to all of our markets. So what I'm hoping here is that you're coming in with some questions, and we're going to give you some solutions to move forward to building your application. So let's get straight into the content sets. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so if you hear me coughing or whatnot, that would be why. So please bear with me. But let's get into the content here. So first things first, I think we need to, as we're mapping out our mobile applications, we need to first understand how users in our marketplace or in our geographies, what are they using their smartphones for? And here's why I'm doing it this way. Even though our focus is classifieds and tool sets or products that you are producing content for, I think it's important to take a look at the overall worldwide usage of smartphones, and here's why. We as business people are in the game to obviously increase our market share, increase revenues, and so on. I think if we only look at what people are doing with classifieds, I mean, that's a large part of it if we're building a classified application, but if we only look at that, we run the risk of having our mobile application become a Me Too product. It does what the others do, which makes it harder for us to amass a larger audience. If we take a look at what people are doing with their smartphones in general, we may find some user benefits to adding different feature sets to our classified applications that one probably wouldn't have thought of before if they just compared one classified platform to another. So I think stepping back and looking at the overall picture is very, very important to make sure our product is feature-rich and to make sure our product also engages. We talked about engagement earlier on at the beginning of this call, so which is why I'm starting off in this fashion. So what are they using it for? Now, if you ask anybody this question, they're probably going to come up with some basic answers. They're going to say, well, obviously GPS and social media. Those are big, obvious things that people are using their smartphones for. But, you know, we want to dig a little deeper into that. And I would agree, you know, off the top of my head, when we talk about features, so not making phone calls or checking email, those are givens, we know that. When we talk about features and what people will use their smartphone for, I'd probably say the same two things. You know, with GPS, when I'm in a taxi and I'm saying I'm going to 534 Main Street, the driver asks me for the main intersection, I will immediately open up my my phone and get into an application, find the business listing and get the main intersection and the mapping and so on. So I know I use my GPS a lot and also syndicate to social media sites a lot. So that makes sense. But what we want to do is take a look at what else they're using their phones for. And I also want to take a look at where they're using their phones at, their smartphones at, because that will tell us a couple of things about our audience that we could potentially amass with our mobile application. So if we've got a web property for our product and now we're rolling out a mobile app for our product, understanding where our customers use their mobile phones will allow us to then streamline design and functionality. So what I'm saying here is, if in your marketplace you find people use their mobile apps more so when they're out of home and not when they're in home, then you got to start to build a picture in your mind. So this person wants to access your mobile application maybe when they're on the subway, maybe when they only have one hand available because they're holding onto the railing because they're standing on the subway, couldn't get a seat. So this tells you that they don't have a lot of time to be looking for navigational points and links. They need to make sure that that information is clear, it's at their fingertips, and so on. If, however, you find in your marketplace you've got a lot of people using their smartphones while in home and out of home, now you've got some flexibility and leverage when it comes to design and functionality. So, I mean, even something as simple as that is important when you're going into building your application, understanding where they're using their smartphones. But let's get back to the content. And let's drill down in the content and what they're using it for most. So let me explain this particular graphic. So the red line, what we have here, listed on the left, are some common feature sets and applications that people are downloading from their app stores. Okay, and the red line represents people who say, oh, yeah, I have an application on my phone that does that. The gray line, though, represents those folks that say, yeah, I've got that feature, and it's extremely valuable to me, okay? So having the feature is one thing, but making sure it is valuable and useful to your user is obviously the bigger part, because that's the part about engagement. You know, we talked about that stat that only 1 in 4 of the apps downloaded are never used again. We want to make sure we're looking at these types of things so that we aren't a part of that statistic of folks who throw out an application and then all of a sudden no one ever uses it again after they download it. So let's take a look at this list. What we can see is that, you know, music is at the top in terms of I've got a feature or a tool on my phone, application on my phone that allows me to download and play music in a really neat way. Social networking we all know about. Web browsing is also up there. But let's take a look at GPS. So earlier on, you know, we had the, you know, what do they use their phones for? We had two very obvious ones that people always say. So GPS, yes, it's absolutely up there. But take a look at the useful line. People are saying, yeah, having this GPS functionality in my applications it's hugely important for me. And that would make sense because when I've got my smartphone, and as that graph on the previous slide showed us, a lot of people are using their smartphones while out of home. So it would make sense that I'm going to need to get location type information or location services while I'm out of home to figure out where exactly I'm going, and I need it very quickly. And let's just digress a little bit as we talk about GPS. So I mentioned before, you know, it's important to take a look at smartphone content and user activity from a wide perspective and not just a perspective of classifieds, because it will give you ideas on things that you can do with your classified platform to better bolster your positioning. So take a look at GPS. Imagine if I am one of your customers and I've used your mobile application, as well as maybe I've got an account set up on your website. So I've got an account and I use both your web property and I use your mobile application. You say to me, Beverly, if you want, we can push you alerts, push you notifications, for when items you're interested in become available on our website. And I think the whole thing of putting in alerts for things that you're interested in is not new to any of us, but think about how you can extend that feature set now that you've got a mobile application. So I tell you I'm interested in buying a 2005 Acura RSX. I want that, and I want one that's got, 100,000 kilometers on it or less. I give you all of my information in terms of what I'm looking for. And I said, yes, it's okay for you to push notifications to me if it's in line with the alerts that I've asked you to alert me on when these items come available. Imagine I'm somewhere downtown or I'm in some borough and I'm walking around and I'm walking close to where you've got some content. You've got a customer who's uploaded a classified ad for a 2005 RSX, which pretty much still fits my alert specifications. And I'm walking close by this particular neighborhood where that item is. Imagine now if you were to push me a notification and say, Beverly, that Acura that you were interested in is about 5 kilometers from where you are. We've got a new product. Are you interested in getting the details about this classified listing? So here, if you think out of the box on how you can use the different applications or features of an application that folks are saying are extremely valuable, if you can intertwine that into your product, and now you've become something that's not a Me Too classified application. So looking at these numbers in that way and thinking about how you can add elements to your application is extremely beneficial. The other thing I want to just point out on this particular graphic here, this graph, is that people are saying, when we talk about what's more valuable to them, mobile payments or paying for things using my mobile phone is deemed more valuable to users than games, which is really interesting because games, when you look at games, it's quite large, right? It's not just Age of Empires and some of those more wartime games that we're talking about that a certain demographic will play, like true gamers will play. Games also includes things like solitaire or the bubble game and that type of thing, which has a larger cast of people using those types of tools, or games, sorry. My mother, for example, will play games on her phone or on her computer to pass the time. So people are saying they would rather pay, they find paying for things with their mobile phone more valuable than playing games, which is, for us, as people who are in the business of helping folks buy and sell items, we offer different paid-for upsells for them to make sure their product has better placement. This is a very interesting point for us and something that I think we should actually build upon. How can we include or better include commerce in our applications? Because people are saying they don't mind paying for things using their mobile phone, using a mobile wallet. And let's just take the topic of shopping even further. When it comes to shopping and my smartphone, there are a couple of things that people say that they do with their smartphones all around the topic of shopping. Price comparison, product research, reading reviews, of course, couponing, which I know a lot of you have very big coupon elements to your business, location services, and paying for a product or service. These are all things that folks are saying, some of the highlights that they're saying that they do it already on their mobile phones. So, you got to think about how can we then, if they're willing to pay and do all of these types of activities on their mobile phone, how can we better include commerce in our mobile process? If I take a look at this next slide, this just plays up on the, what I'm willing to use my smartphone for. People were asked, if you had the opportunity to use your smartphone as some sort of credit card to help you pay for your purchases or your products and goods and services that you're buying, would you use it as a credit card? And 60% of them said they would. They'd be interested in exploring using it as some sort of credit card payment, which is very interesting. And later on when we talk about, things you should consider, maybe not out of the gate when you launch your application, but maybe later on, we talk about, do you include yourself in the entire transaction that happens between that buyer and seller? And there are online classified properties who do just that in China today, and they've been doing it for quite some time and managing that whole process. And the benefits to them is this. They've got better stats and results in determining the sell-through or the completion of a transaction. They can look at that information by category, by product, by geography that they support. And then there's also another level of trust that happens within that community because they feel the owner of this particular large classified website is going to manage the transaction between the buyer and the seller. And there's a whole air of trust that comes about with that. I'm sure you've all done focus groups or surveys or studies, and when you've asked people, what attracts you to a particular classified platform, a lot of people, trust is very much so up there. Trust and integrity is very high up there, and content, of course. So, if you can own or be a part of that transaction process, you've just all of a sudden now increased the trust and integrity within your network. And people are saying they're more than willing to use their smartphones as a tool to help to facilitate that transaction or the payment going back and forth. Now, what I'll say is even though people are saying, hey, the customers are saying, listen, I will use my smartphone in this fashion, we don't see a lot of it. And here's why we don't see a lot of it. One is, we still have a lot of informational-heavy applications that are out there that don't really deal with commerce. That's one. Two is, when a business does try to include a commerce piece within their application, there's a lot of securities and testing that has to happen to make sure it fits the rules and responsibility sections of the particular App Store owner. If some of you have tried to already submit a mobile application to the Apple App Store, then you will know how difficult it is if you've got a commerce piece in there, and you may have already been rejected. And don't feel bad. I would say 9 out of 10 people that I talk to have tried to submit a commerce type piece of functionality within their app. The first time are often rejected, and they've got to go back and fix securities and so on. Which is why a lot of people elect to say, listen, I will give you all kinds of functionality on my mobile application, but when it comes to paying for something, I'm now going to send you to my secured website via your smartphone because I know my website is secure and I've passed all the laws and rules and regulations there. So instead of dealing with the back and forth of the app stores, they take people out to do commerce. So I think, having to deal with some of these regulations and albeit the application of the mobile app world is relatively new when you take a look at how long digital commerce has been around, a lot of people have not done the exploration required to really get this whole using your smartphone as a payment source to where it needs to be to the next level. But I think all that's going to change. The data more and more, the number of people willing to use their mobile phones or their smartphones in the commerce, in transactions, the number of folks willing to do that has gone up and is continuing to go up. So it's only going to be so long until we can go on continuing to ignore this particular fact. We're going to have to somehow adopt a customer's willingness to do this with us in our applications. And I think the sooner we do it, the better, because we're giving them something that they're asking for. They're asking us to spend their money via their smartphone with us. So why wouldn't we do that? Let's move forward to the next section, which is how do we engage? We talked about that particular stat about the 1 in 4. So how do we engage to make sure we're not a part of that 1 in 4? Now, there are 2 forms, I would say, or 2 ways to model your mobile application. One is something I call the ROI model, and one is something I call the engage model. Now, if any of you are on the phone or on this call, and you're responsible for, your fiscal bottom line, you may be saying, yes, the ROI model is perfect. That makes sense for me. I will argue, though, that all of us on this call should be looking at the engage model if we're looking at launching our mobile application for the first time, or if our mobile application is solely just around the world of classifieds at this moment. I would be looking at the engage model. Let me explain these a little bit more. So the monetary or ROI model, which some call the enrich model, so enriching your bottom line, means that everything is set up to be transaction-based, okay? So your functionality and flow is all about how can we get this person to the checkout faster? How can we kind of guide their activity to that point where they're checking out and spending some money with us, okay? If your goal is short-term or bottom-line critical, then you're going to want to go with the ROI model, which is why I'm saying I don't think that applies to any of us. I think the engage applies to all of us because our goals in building our classified applications are not short-term. It's about building a community, a mobile community. It's about building engaged users. It's about building loyalists to our application who will then go on and syndicate and tell their friends about our application. And if that's if you're all nodding your head saying, yes, of course, that's what my application is about, then the engage model is for you. The engage model, usually what you'll find with those is that you usually provide tools and information and content that helps me as your user, your mobile app user, make an intelligent decision. So for you guys, it's going to be providing appropriate classified content to whatever I'm searching for, allowing me to compare, save, send to friends so I can get their feedback, to then come back and purchase something from that particular buyer who's advertised with you. So that's the engage model. Now, with that being said, I know I made the ROI model sound a little crass and, quick and dirty, but there are times where the ROI monetary model will work. If you take a look at Starbucks, for example, and I'm a big Starbucks fan, if any of you know, I've listened to any of our other webinars about social media, you'll know that I talk a lot about Starbucks and some of the things that they do to engage their populace. And Starbucks, being what I like to think with some of the leaders in using social media for business, what Starbucks does is they listen to what people are saying about them in the social sphere on things like Twitter, Facebook, and also on their website, getting the feedback and reviews from their customers and so on. What Starbucks did in this particular case, for example, they listened to one kind of common complaint from their customers, which was that it just took too long in the morning for me to get a coffee before work, and sometimes I was late. That lineup in the morning was just ridiculous. So what Starbucks did is they kind of changed the flow of their application, their mobile application, and they made paying for your coffee via your mobile phone, your smartphone, one of the primary feature sets. Because they figured, you know what, if we can get to the straight kind of enriched ROI model, we can allow people to pay for their coffee using their mobile phone, and then we'll alleviate the number one complaint that we're getting from customers, which is the length of the lines in the morning. So for them, they made an ROI-based decision, but it was based on fact. It was based on customer complaints, fact, feedback, which made sense for them. So that's why I'm saying, for most times, for those of us on the call, the engage model is the model we want to take, but there are times where the ROI model will work for some, and so Starbucks is one example of that. So here again, I've got that stat, which we don't want to be. 25% of apps downloaded are used once upon download and never used again. So how do we engage? And I want to say the formula to engagement is simple, especially if you've sat down and you've mapped out, who your users are, how technically inclined are they, that type of thing. If you've mapped all that out, you're going to have a pretty easy time of making sure you're engaging. Once you've got the application and elements of the application can be put into context, so what does it mean to me geographically, usually? Once you give me some information so I can make intelligent decisions, and once there's a bit of a social angle, as we saw people with their smartphones, and when it comes to shopping, they're very big on reading reviews and getting feedback from their peers. So that social angle will allow me to do that. So the content is contextual. It means something to me, maybe geographical relevance, or I've asked you to send me information about something that I'm looking for. So it's contextual. You give me rich information about the item. How much does it cost? Where is it located? How many kilometers does it have? What color is it? What kind of features does the vehicle have inside of it? They give me tons of information so I can make an intelligent decision. And, of course, the social angle allowing me to share and get my friends to also weigh in on my purchase. Other things I would say you want to take a look at when you're looking at engagement. You want to take a look at your current mobile touchpoint analytics. Even if you don't have a mobile app in market today, you can still take a look at your website analytics and look at people who are accessing your site from a mobile device, okay? You want to take a look at those stats because you want to see what pages are they going into, how deeply are they penetrating your application or your content or your pages, how much time are they spending, when are they exiting, and how many of them are return users using mobile. Because this information, and a lot of times when you check it out, there is some differences between how folks are accessing your classified website from a mobile device versus an actual PC. There are some differences in what they do when they're with you. So if you've got this data already, it's going to put you miles ahead of the game when building out your mobile application, because already now you know a couple of things about your mobile users to make sure that when you build your application, it should be pretty much so in context to what they want to see. And the other thing I want to say for engagement that's really big or really important, your updates for new features are going to become invaluable for you. Now, I know it can be a lot of work, especially if you've decided to go the native app mode, meaning so you're building an application that supports or works on iOS, you've got an application that works on Android, you've got an application that works on BlackBerry. What you've then essentially done is taken your one application, you've built it 3 times to make sure it works on these different operating systems. So every time you put a new feature in, you've got to build the new feature 3 times again to make sure it works on these operating systems. But every time you do an update, it gives the user something else to come back and take a look at your tool for. Although it sounds really small and simple, I can't tell you how many times people have gone back and discovered an app that maybe they had downloaded a while ago, but now when they see this app has an update, they'll go in to take a look to see, well, how has it changed? It's been a while since I've been here. So your updates for new features are totally invaluable. With that being said, we talked earlier on about let's go ahead and make sure when we're starting our mobile app build that we build out our roadmap. What does our roadmap look like? And you can, even though you've got a bevy of ideas today, you can take some of those ideas and strategically plot them across your map so you know at what point of the year and which year you're going to roll some of these feature sets out. They're going to be invaluable when it comes to engagement. It's a small topic, but goes a long way. Okay? So let's talk a bit about design. I know throughout this we've been talking a little bit about design here and there. Let's talk about design. As I mentioned before, designing for mobile is very different than the web. You've got to design with the user in mind. We can't go in there designing blindly thinking, okay, well, our website works and looks like this, so let's just get a version of that on a mobile application. We know it works great with the web. Our customers are enjoying navigating and their time with us on our website. Let's just kind of mirror that for the mobile app. That's the wrong approach. You want to make sure you're looking at everything in context. Earlier on the webinar, I gave the example of you got to understand where your mobile user is going to be using your application. As I said before, it could be on the subway. I'm on the subway, it's rush hour, it's in the morning, I'm on the way to work, the subway is absolutely jam-packed. It means I didn't get a seat this morning. That's okay, I'm standing up. So I've got my purse over one shoulder, my left hand is holding onto the bar to make sure I don't fall when the subway does its sudden stops and so on, but I've got my smartphone in my right hand, which means now I've got only one hand and probably only 2 fingers that can actually use the screen and touch the screen to get me to where I need to go. The subway is kind of ubbing back and forth and being pushed around. Think about your user and build context around how they're going to be using your app, because that's going to help when it comes to the design and the functionality of your app. We kind of break it down even more so here on the next couple of slides. So again, you're thinking about your user first. Who is your mobile user? Are they tech savvy? Are they mobile moms? Are they social beasts? So I've got to have a lot of social elements within there. How do they use your product today? And as we talked about before, take a look at your web analytics and people who are accessing your website from a mobile phone, because a lot of times the way they use your website or interact with your website is going to differ, and in some cases greatly, from how they would use or interact with your website if they were sitting at their PC in a stationary position. So you want to understand who your user is and how they're using your application for sure. Then you also want to prioritize, and I don't know about you guys, but I know when I sit down to brainstorm with a group of people, we've got a list of 1,000,001 things that everybody thinks are really important and we should kind of go to market with first. But you make your list of things that you'd like to have in your application. Then you go back always and you check on your user. And you want to make sure that your list of what you're going to market with are the most important and relevant and timely things for your users. Focus on those first. The rest of the items on that list will probably get done, but they'll be plopped in our roadmap. So we'll know we're going to do it at some point in the future. But you want to look at, your user, now that you know who they are, what will they use the most in this kind of wish list of things that need to go into the application. You build those features first, and your design and layout must, your design and layout, should feature these must-haves that your users are saying they will need to actually use or engage with your product, with your mobile application. With that being said, you want to refrain from clutter and think about including the feature sets in the user flow. And the best way for me to further describe or give an example around this is think Steve Jobs and think Apple, okay? Apple, and especially Steve, as the ringleader of this, often thought that, you know what, things should work this way. Users should use these applications in this way. So instead of kind of clearly spelling out, you know, click here, go here, and then get that result, they just made one click, and that was the result that you got. And now, if you ask anybody who's got an Apple product, an iPhone, an iPad, the features and the way it's laid out, we've become accustomed to it. It works part and parcel with our lifestyle and how we want to engage and find information. But what they did is they refrained from the clutter, they kept it simple, and just included the feature sets in the user flow. It has made sense. When you go here, you're going to go to this particular point. So mapping all of that out will encourage you, or allow you, sorry, to get all of those features that were on that massive list from your brainstorming session in play, but you're going to do it with the user flow in mind, so making it very easy for them to get to that. When we get down to the basic design, you want to make sure you're looking at designing for small screens. We all know how big the real estate is on your smartphone in terms of the screen, so you want to make sure you're designing for small screens. You want to design for that multitasker. Remember, I was a person on the subway. I had my purse over one shoulder, maybe my laptop bag, holding onto the railing to make sure I don't fall, and I have my smartphone in my one hand. So how do you design for that kind of person? You want to make sure the navigation is super, super simple, because, again, I don't have a lot of time, nor do I have a lot of focus, because I'm trying to focus on standing up on the subway, nor do I have a lot of focus to really hone in to your design and your layout. So you've got to make those links really, really obvious. Another thing, too, is, you know, if I'm in your application and I'm doing something and maybe I'm doing it wrong, or I'm inputting information but your application doesn't work that way, or it's not accepting the information I'm inputting, provide visual feedback. So it's very clear to me that, oh my gosh, Beverly, that password string doesn't work, or Beverly, that link is no longer active, or Beverly, that ad no longer exists, or whatever the case may be. Make sure that feedback is visual. You don't want me having to source and search on your mobile app, because I will get disengaged very quickly and shut it down. Make sure it's very easy for me to get feedback from the application. And also minimize user input. There have been a couple of mobile apps that I've stopped using. I downloaded it because it was a recommendation from someone saying, hey, you've got to use this particular app. So I downloaded it. In order for me to use the app, I've got to register, and the registration must-haves, or the important fields that I have to fill out, were very, very long. They wanted name, first, last, email address, phone number. That's just too much for me, especially if I'm on the go and out of home when using my smartphone. So you want to make sure, if you need the user to give you information in order for the application to work for them, you want to minimize how much information you need for them so they can get deep and right into your content set, okay? So let's go now into our next section, which is, what does all that we've just talked about mean for classifieds? Now, and here's where things can get pretty interesting. One of the things that you want to do, even before you take a look at the content sets and the users and so on, you want to ask yourself a couple of questions. And these, I think, are probably questions that you guys ask when you're building out anything. But you have to do the same type of thing with mobile. So you want to understand what role mobile plays in your overall strategy as an organization, what your tiered priorities are for mobile. Maybe first it's to acquire content. That's number one priority. Maybe second is to acquire users. And maybe third is to acquire revenue, whatever the case may be. But make sure you understand what your tiered priorities are for mobile. You want to talk about how mobile can drive your cross-channel activity. At the beginning of this webinar, I said, you know, a lot of us here, obviously on the call, deal with classifieds, but I know our businesses also have directories. We also have location services or group buying applications as well that our companies kind of manage and run. So can this mobile application that we're building up for classifieds, are there elements that can support cross-channel activity? You want to think about that as well, because that's also going to speak heavily into your roadmap that we keep talking about and saying you need to build out that roadmap. The cross-channel activity will speak heavily into that. And then, of course, what is your timeline and your internal readiness for mobile? How soon do we want to go to market, and do we have staff to support the app once it's in market? People's questions, querying what kind of comments are being said about our mobile application, and so on. And also just doing the updates as we need them. If things break, how do we fix it? Do we have the technical facilities to support this? In a minute, we're going to look at two really big applications, classified applications in our marketplace, and we're going to see that one of the common elements or common complaints for both of the applications is that people keep saying it just keeps crashing, it just keeps crashing, it just keeps crashing. And these are two of the most highly rated, meaning 5 stars or 4.5 stars in the App Store, but some of the common things is it just keeps crashing. And that tells me a couple of things. One is, even though these classified companies are big, they're strong, their mobile strategy still isn't clearly thought out. If it was clearly thought out, they'd be looking at traffic numbers, they'd be looking at peak performance, and they'd be making sure they have the facilities to support that. What this tells me is someone is not looking at this data, or they're looking at this data, but they're not acting fast enough to make sure they correct it so the customer has a proper or good user experience for the mobile application. So again, you want to look at your timeline for go-to-market and your internal readiness to support the app once it comes out. So that's going to be extremely big. We talked about engagement and making sure people come back to your application. If you don't have the tools to update or support the application, it's going to be a bad taste in your users' mouths. And then, of course, you also want to take a look at how you're going to measure success of mobile. What does success for your company look like? Because all the time you want to go back and take a look at your user data and statistics to see how successful you have been or your application has been with your company's overall goal. As we talk about classifieds and mobile applications, I thought it was really relevant, and you guys knew this was coming up, where you had at least one slide talking about money and revenue expectations. And it's very clear that there's tons more mobile ad revenue for us to take and get access to. And you know, this actually raises a really good point. A lot of times I find we as classified companies, when we put out a mobile application for classifieds, it does the basics, right? It allows someone to a private party person to upload a photo and some comments, and they can place the ad using the app, and then it allows someone to search to find content as well. And then oftentimes we think, well, this is good because even our business customers, our small businesses or medium-sized businesses or professional customers, they need to use the same feature sets. They need to upload a photo and some copy, and they're good to go. So both private and commercial can use the application as is. And that's very true. But instead of looking at it from that basic and kind of rudimentary form, let's add some layers on it for business customers. We've had and we've spoken to small to medium-sized businesses who do a lot of advertising with newspapers, both online, print, and so on, or in their generalist magazines, classified magazines. And they said to us, you know, we're seeing more and more people come into our brick-and-mortar location with their smartphone in hand saying, listen, I saw this particular product. Do you have it? Or I saw here on this site that you mentioned you've got a discount. Is this still applicable? And the customer all this time is holding their smartphone up in their hand, showing it to the proprietor, saying, hey, do you have such and such? And the smartphone now becomes a part of this off-site interaction at the brick-and-mortar location. So because of this, we've had small to medium-sized business owners say, listen, you know what, we are more than willing to explore different types of mobile advertising with our newspaper partners who've got mobile applications. So with that being said, when you're sitting down and you're doing your roadmap, and it may start that you come up with the application in the most rudimentary forms, you can upload a photo and some copy, fine, that makes sense, but take some time, maybe assign a committee to look at how now can you maximize revenue points, but by making some business-specific ad units that then your small businesses or medium businesses that do advertising with you, that they'll be able to benefit from. It gives them greater exposure, but now it's also paying for your mobile application in ways that you never would have thought of. I find a lot of us are putting out kind of the basic app that allows for the basic rudimentary activity, but we're not thinking about how we can utilize mobile as a standalone for our business clients as well, and that's going to be big. That's how you're going to be a part of this global mobile ad revenue piece that we're showing here on your classifieds platform, is by thinking about how you can utilize your classified platform to better promote your small business clients. A couple of just points or takeaway points on things you want to do or think about when you're building your mobile application. First thing I would say is avoid doing mobile for the sake of having an app. Just because Tom down the road has an app doesn't mean that you need to come out and run and get your app out to market immediately. It's very important that you sit down and you plan. You know, we talked a lot about making sure we're looking at how people are using smartphones overall. So when my app comes out now, it becomes different. It's not a Me Too app. It doesn't operate the exact same way as Tom's app does. I mean, it gives customers the basic functionality that we know they want, but it also takes a look at what else are customers doing with their smartphones, and how so can I benefit from that and in turn delight my customer. So you want to plan. Planning at the beginning is going to allow you to not become that statistic, to engage and make sure you've got a really feature-rich product. Okay, so don't rush to market just because, but start planning and then building accordingly. Stay away from the clutter and include functionality in the user flow, as we talked about before. Try to keep your design or your interface very, very easy to use and to navigate. Stay away from a whole bunch of different links that are all over the page. You want to maybe look at putting some of that functionality within the user flow. We talked about the Apple example. If you feel that customers, when they click on this particular button, should see these things on screen, then do that. Do that, and that way now you've got less clutter, but you're giving people that functionality because you've thought about how they shop and how they interact with your brand, as opposed to having them click a myriad of times to get to particular content sets, which may mean, and we'll have to come to terms with this, which may mean that the flow of a user on your mobile app may be slightly different than the flow of a user on your website. Because your website, you've got more leverage. I'm usually sitting down somewhere. I can focus a little more. So yeah, I can click around and explore the page. On my mobile app, I don't have that luxury. I need to get from point A to point B, and you need to drive me there. That's your job as a classified content producer, to drive me to the points of information that I'm going to need. Don't rush to make the app fee-based. I know maybe some of you on this call have erected paywalls on your website and that type of thing. I strongly encourage you to keep your app free. Look to your small to medium-sized business clients. Look to extending their mobile coverage. Look to extending their mobile advertising within your applications, and have that pay for your app. I would not rush to make it fee-based unless you've got a great story to tell and a great value proposition. For me, the little private owner here who wants to buy something, I would not rush to make it fee-based. And the unfortunate thing is, I'm seeing a lot of people looking at doing that. I had a client just the other day send me the roughs of their application, and at the end of his email, he said, test out the application and let me know what you would pay to use the app. My answer is nothing. Not at all, but I pay anything to use this application. And I'm the private user. You want to amass enough of a network so that you can then go to your businesses and say, well, I've got 1.5 million people in this particular geography using this mobile application. You need to be here. You need to pay to be here. That's the model for mobile as far as I'm concerned, not making it fee-based. You want to also think about your bandwidth and mobile user capacity. As I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about two kind of really, really big classified mobile apps that are in our market, and a very common and widely discussed issue with these apps is that it keeps crashing. I mean, for me, if I was to go on someone's website and it kept crashing, I would not go back there again. Mobile, people are being a bit more tolerant because it's new, and they're like, okay, well, maybe something to do with my phone, and they're trying to figure it all out. But it's going to come to a point, and very quickly, where the crashing situation is not going to be acceptable. The same way it's not acceptable today if you were to go on to my website and I kept crashing. So please, please, please look at your bandwidth. Look at your capacity. Do you have enough to support all the folks who may be using your application? And further to that, do you have people to support mobile? So once you go live, are there people looking at the numbers to see when are we having outages? When are we getting to peak or close to peak? Are there people who can take a look at that and make changes for you accordingly? That's a must. You're going to make sure you need to make sure you have those things. The next point I have here is search, and a lot of you on the call are probably saying, well, Beverly, obviously search has to be included. This is nothing new. Why are you telling us about search? And I've included search because on our websites as classified content producers, we've been doing this for years. So we've got, advanced search, feature search, this kind of search, that kind of search. We've given people a huge amount of ways to find information because we know they're there to find content. But what happens when we go to mobile is we provide very few ways for people to search for content. And so people will complain and say, well, those neat search tools that you had online, why can't I search mobile in the same way? You got to take a look at your data, which this also rolls into number 6. You got to take a look at your data and how people are searching for tools today or searching for content today. Is it going to be enough for you to go with a basic search feature on your application? If people are just using basic search today, then I would say, yeah, you can go with basic search on your application. But if people are using kilometer radius, 9 times out of 10 using kilometer radius to find things, bet your bottom dollar you need to include kilometer radius on the mobile app. That's going to be a complaint. So I've included search because when I take a look at a lot of the mobile classified applications, I find we do search a disservice when it comes to mobile. That's why it's here and kind of pulled out as a major talking point. And again, as I mentioned, 5 kind of rolls into 6, which is the website feature assessment. So what are people using the most and how are they searching for items the most on my website? That will tell you what kind of search elements you're going to need to probably include on the mobile application to make sure it's a great user experience. Now, before I mention you're probably sitting down and doing a brainstorming session with people in your organization, and you may end up with a list of 50 things. Now, we know we can't go to market with 50 things, but what are some of the basic kind of features that we need to have? And I've got them listed here as early considerations, because you may do these in 2 or 3 iterations over 1 year. But some things I think you need to take a look at for sure is how that app is going to pay for itself, how it's going to pay for itself at launch, and all the updates that you're going to do for it and so on, how it's going to pay for the capacity and the bandwidth that you're going to take to support all of your users and so on. And to do that, I think you need to sit down very, very early on in your build and look at how we can find new advertising spots for our business clients, or advertising tools for our business clients when it comes to mobile. Can we do in-app advertising and make it contextual so it's not injurious to the user flow? How can we better feature our business listings in our classified application? I would encourage you to sit down and very early talk about that. You want to talk about how you can find revenue streams to avoid, having someone come to you and say, well, listen, we're spending so much money to support mobile and we're not making any money off of it. I think we need to make the app fee-based. You don't want to make the app fee-based. Find other ways to pay for the app. And your small business, small to medium-sized companies are the ones who are saying they're willing to explore different ways of advertising with you already in mobile. So look to see how you can monetize them as customers in your mobile applications. You want to make the app available on multiple operating systems and devices. So I'm a big supporter of, me take a look at my data and who's coming to my website. What operating system, mobile operating system, is accessing my website the most? Great, that tells me that the majority of my customers then, for example, are iOS users. So I'm going to make sure my first application, if I'm doing native app, is built supporting iOS. I will probably give myself a good 60 days to take a look at what people are saying. Am I getting any complaints? What do they really like about the user flow? Then I'm going to release Android. At the same time, I'm still developing Android. I'm doing all of that, but I've got room to go in to make changes because I'm looking at what people are saying about their experience with my Apple or their iOS app that I've created for them. I'm not fond of releasing all the apps at the same time. I would say do the one that you feel most of your customers have or are using in your marketplace, look at the data, and then release the other. But very soon within each other, within the time frame of one release, you've got to be looking at releasing your next operating system. And then look at devices as well. One of the complaints that we also get from folks is that, I'm trying to access this classified application, but I'm doing it on my iPad. Why must I be forced to use a small screen on my iPad when we've got all this real estate? So when you're doing iOS, think about also creating an iPad-enabled or supported version as well. Same thing goes for Android tablets. You want to make sure you're looking at all of that. I want to make sure as much as possible very early on that you're integrating with your existing business systems. If I have an account with you on your website, I should be able to use the same login information if I'm logging in on my mobile application. If I've saved something while I was on the subway, I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to favorite this particular vehicle because I'm really interested in buying this one. When I get to work and log into your website, I should see what I saved on my mobile phone on the subway. And so some of you on this call who are leaders in your organizations are saying, well, this is obvious. Yeah, it's obvious, but you know what? There's a lot of applications out there that don't allow me to do this today. And that's a big complaint from customers, which is, why can't I see what I've saved online on that account? It's the same login credentials, but I can't access the information. That is a big complaint. You want to make sure you're integrating as much as you can with your existing systems. And you want to give users a reason to allow you to push information to them. Remember I gave you the example before about GPS where I said, hey, you know what, I'm interested in that 2005 Acura RSX. Please push information to whenever whenever something comes up online which matches my criteria. Give them reasons to push information. If they say to you, yes, application 123 classifieds, please push information to me, that's a good sign that this person is going to be an engaged and loyal user. We want more of those. We don't want to be a part of that statistic of I was downloaded and just never used again. We want people to come back and use us. And the other kind of thing I've got here is price comparison. And price comparisons can be a bit more of a development challenge. I mean, it will take a little longer. I shouldn't use the word challenge. It may take you a little longer. But what we've seen with people when they're shopping with mobile, the whole getting information, reading reviews, comparing items is very big for them. And you may do it in a very rudimentary way and then move on to do it in a more exploratory way, which allows us to, or the user to take information from other sources, very similar to what Best Buy did with their whole mobile strategy. So you can start with price comparison in a very rudimentary way today, which means maybe I'm just comparing items on your website, other content that is comparable to what I'm looking for. Maybe you give me a nice kind of compare screen with side by side or one on top of the other, whatever the case may be. And then later on, you look at how can I now really play on this whole price comparison and reviews and gathering information part of the application for users. So we talked about early consideration. Let's now talk about future feature sets. And these are things just off the top of my head, if I was sitting down and doing a roadmap, things that I'd be plotting in there because data tells me today folks with smartphones that they find these things extremely, extremely valuable to them. So first thing I've got here is incorporating location-based services. So do you have a group buying type product or directory type product today? When I'm searching for classified, are there ways to kind of pull in some of that information to now make my whole experience with you a little richer story? You know, I'm searching for stuff in this particular area for classifieds, but you know, you've got small businesses in that same area who have coupons or deals that are going on right now. Can we include some of that and encourage the user to go in there with their smartphone, therefore using location-based services kind of principles or methodologies in the user experience of my classified app? Those are things I would think of. Price comparison is here again, as we talked about before. You know, maybe you launch early on with the rudimentary price comparison. It allows someone to compare things that are on site, the content you already have in your database. But maybe the future of your application is, you know, want to know how this vehicle stands up to what else is out there, and you can pull in data sets from the web and allow me, the user, through your application to do a one-stop shopping type activity and kind of see what other prices are out there, what other people are saying in reviews and so on about this vehicle that I'm interested in purchasing. That would be invaluable to me because now you're allowing me to do all of my research in one location. I don't have to break it up and it's no longer fragmented. You know, I'm doing one set with you and one set someplace else. It can be very useful. Very similar to the Best Buy model. Best Buy now, with their mobile app, you know, they had said, listen, we can roll out a mobile application. This is product-rich story. It tells you what kinds of products we carry and gives you the specs on the products. Then they said we're going to be any other large brick-and-mortar electronics store. We're going to match their mobile application. That's what those guys do as well. How do we become more valuable to the customer? And they said, in order for them to become more valuable to the customer, let's bring in electronics reviews from other properties. So when that client is using our mobile application, it now becomes a really useful tool for them. Not only could they be looking for content that we have in our store, but they can also be looking to see what other people are saying about that particular item as well, okay? The other one is peer-to-peer feedback services. So how do we talked about earlier that people are very interested when it comes to shopping to get recommendations from friends and so on. Is there a way to create a better peer-to-peer feedback network within my mobile application as well? And then lastly, as I mentioned before, becoming a part of that transaction. Now, if you on this phone are a part of the finance team, you're probably squirming in your seat thinking, gosh, there's so much liabilities if you were to be a part of the transaction. But again, your customers are telling you they want to use their smartphone to pay for things that they're interested in. But we keep saying no, 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 and pushing back because it's very difficult. I get get it. But at some point, we're going to have to listen and say, okay, so you want to use your smartphone to do this? We're going to help you and we're going to become a part of that transaction. Therefore, making it easier for you to get from point A to point B with that particular seller. And also it's happening under our umbrella, our domain. So now it's a little more safe. You trust it. You know the properties. You know the folks who are in charge. It's our reputable company. So becoming a part of the transaction may scare you now, but I think it's something you're going to have to strongly consider as you move forward based on the data. Now, I want to get into this part fairly quickly. I think one of the next webinars we'll have a deeper review of classified mobile applications. But we just grabbed two very popular mobile apps, classified mobile apps in our marketplace, Kijiji and Laypack. Both of these scored in terms of customer ratings at least a 4.5 star out of 5. So the majority of the feedback about these particular applications have all been positive, scored much, much better than Craigslist did in our marketplace, which is why we didn't include them here. That's giving you some background. Between the two of them, I would say we probably had about 5,000 reviews to kind of look at to get a sense of how people felt about these applications, okay? So you can see, you know, your starting page is a little different, depending on which app you're going to be using and so on. But let's kind of go in and take a look at what people are saying about these applications. And again, remember, these are the big kind of leaders in our marketplace. So some of the things, we pull out some of the common commentary, from customers who were using the apps to kind of show you some of the things that they were honing in on. The fact that it's free, easy to use. Kijiji provides people with a wizard to help them kind of navigate through the application. Search is quick and easy for businesses. We had a lot of business owners kind of weighing in as well. People like the fact that it's portable. They're on the road and they can use it and browse, which are all really positive things to hear. When it comes to the negative, big one, remember we talked earlier on about making sure you integrate as much as possible with your other business platforms. People are complaining, saying it doesn't sync your favorites to your web account. So if I save something on the application, I go onto the website, it's not there. I've got to keep going back to the application to get that information. Crashes, we got that a lot. Options are missing in the app that exists on the website. Won't let you search by ad number. Refining search on the app is non-existent. So we've given people one kind of rudimentary way to search for things, but they're saying, well, no, I want to have a better search experience, and I don't like what you're giving me right now. So this is interesting. These are all things that we talked about when we said people will go to market with an app, and maybe they don't have the staff internally to continue to support it and make some of the changes and improvements. So these comments just keep growing and growing and growing. The fact that it's been crashing, the most recent comment was sometime in February about it crashing, and the earlier comment was early last year. So, which means to me someone's not listening, or it's just growing exponentially and they haven't taken the time to increase the capacity to the rate that they should be increasing the capacity. Laypack, let's take a look at them. Again, this is another very popular, one of the best classified mobile applications in our marketplace, according to thousands of people. Again, it's portable, it's mobile. I can use it anytime I'm on the road. I can use it while I'm multitasking and watching TV. It's efficient. Search, they like the fact that search is quick and easy, they said. So one person even said it's easier to use on the website. So, you know, so pretty popular or good things to hear about Laypack. You mentioned about it being efficient. People brought out search. It's portable. They like that. But the crash thing, when you look at the bad, people are saying it crashes often. People are also saying, you know, why must I be forced to use a small screen on my iPad? Can we not make it a little bigger and have an iPad-supported version as well? People are also saying that. People would like to say that, you know, some people also went on to say, and I don't think we have this one here, but some folks said some of the content they saw on the website, they weren't able to see the same content on the mobile application. So if I was searching for used female skates for some strange reason, I would maybe see 50 on the website but only see 10 on the mobile app. So people will pull out that type of stuff. As I mentioned to you, they're being more tolerant than ever because for everybody, it's like, oh, it's a smartphone, it's new. I just got this smartphone, so the application's pretty new to me, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be more tolerant. It's going to be refined. Because I got to tell you, if I got this type of feedback about a website that I was in charge of, I would not be very happy. I would think we have to go right back and do some work to fix our website, because customers would clearly not be happy with this type of experience on a website. We're going to get to the point very soon where they will not be happy with this type of experience on a mobile application as well. They're going to come to expect a nice, smooth user flow when it comes to mobile, without crashing, with content being the same wherever they go, but the website or your mobile application. They're going to expect you to perform that way, the same way they expect you to have 100% uptime when it comes to your website. The other thing I will say, and I'll close this off for classifieds, in terms of what you need to make sure you're doing, is measure, and then measure some more. So always take a look at the analytics, which is why, I made it a point to say a couple of times, when you release your application, you also want to make sure you have enough staff internally to support it. It's one thing to release it, but you've got to take a look at that data. What are people saying about you and your application? Are there things that we need to change? Are there things that we need to update? Are things breaking? Are they crashing? Someone needs to be taking a look at that. Again, right now, it may be okay. Users are tolerant. It's new for them, but they're not going to be tolerant for very, very long. And if you're now coming into market with your application, make sure you've got the proper people and tools and functionality and resources internal to support mobile the way it should be supported. Okay? So we've come to the end, but let me do a quick recap on some things that you want to remember. Map out your strategy. Again, what does your roadmap look like? What does the organization expect from mobile, too? You're going to want to know that to make sure you're not missing the mark from a company-wide perspective. What model is going to work for you and your app? We talked about the ROI model, that kind of quick and dirty, the Starbucks model, or is it the engage model? And again, I will argue that for all of us on this call, I believe it's the engage model that we will need. We may have certain elements of things or promos that we're doing which will apply to the ROI model, but if you're coming in and you're building your classified application for the first time, or just kind of enhancing your current classified application, and that's why you're on this webinar, you want to look at the engagement model for sure. You definitely also want to take a look at the web data around mobile. So look at your web analytics today, and folks who are accessing your website via a mobile device, what are they doing? How are they engaging? How deeply are they engaging? Are they doing something that makes you think there's one point in the particular process that they absolutely hate, and therefore we need to either A, not include it in our mobile application, or make sure we improve it when we include it in our mobile application. When you're mapping out your mobile application too, you want to think about the purchase cycle when you're building out your app. Remember before we talked about the Steve Jobs way of designing something or laying something out. He felt users, if they came here, would then automatically want to go there. You want to think about that as well. How do people want to shop or engage with you on mobile? We don't have the same flexibility or leverage that we do when someone's sitting at a PC, where they can take some time to properly explore a page. On a mobile app, it's quick and dirty. I need to get here to here to get this information. So how can you include the purchase cycle or the information gathering cycle when building your application? Very important. Think about your small to medium-sized businesses who currently advertise with you today in classifieds. What else can we do for them in mobile to allow for their revenue or that revenue stream to pay for this app? I guarantee you there are things that you can do. I'm going to hit here one slide, sorry. I guarantee you that there are things that you can do. And look at it this way, too. These business owners are saying, listen, we recognize the power of mobile now that all these different smartphone operating systems or platforms are out there, because customers are walking into their brick and mortars with their smartphone in hand. So your clients, your business clients, they get it. They get how important it is. If you can find a feature set or a product set that works for them when it comes to mobile, take it to market. You got to start thinking about that so they can then now start to pay for your application and the support that you need for the application to run accordingly after it's launched. You want to make sure you're designing from mobile, you're designing with context in mind. I'm going to say it again, think of that person who's on the subway and I've got only one hand and I'm being shoved around because it's rush hour in the morning. Think of context. Who are your users and where are they using your application? Make sure you're designing and you're laying things out with that in mind. Navigation has to be easy. Functionality has to be easy. Visual feedback is very important. Think about that. When you're also sitting and talking about your feature set for your classified application, I want you to sit back and not just compare yourself to other classified apps that are out there. Look at the users in your geography. How are they using their smartphones today? And their activity with their smartphones, does that tell us anything that we can use and leverage with our classified application? Think wide and then narrow it down. If you think narrow, then there's no place for you to go. Think wide, then narrow it down. Our jobs as folks who are responsible for content production for classifieds is to increase market share and to increase revenue. And for us to do that, we've got to start to think about adding things to our applications which do not make us a Me Too product, which makes us an industry leader, a driver, because my goal is not kind of to take the traffic from the web and take it to the mobile. I mean, it's great if my web users are also engaged with my mobile application. That's good too. But my goal is to attract others with my really neat and intuitive mobile application, because not only does it allow you to look for classifieds and place classified listings, but now I'm going to push relevant GPS-related information to you because you said to me that, you know, this is your profile and things you're interested in. I'm going to help you make your day-to-day life even easier. That's the app that we should be looking to build, not just one that supports classified ad placement or classified ad search. So think wide and then narrow it down. And of course, I can't say this enough. You want to measure, measure, and then measure some more. You should always be on top of what your mobile analytics and data sets are telling you. Your customers will do really interesting things as they navigate through the application, which will tell you a lot about how they feel about different sections of your mobile app. You want to make sure you're looking at those numbers. You don't want to build it and then kind of have a partial staff on top of it. Make sure you've got people to support it. As I said before, customers who are using mobile applications today for classifieds, they've been somewhat tolerant. They've handled the crashes and still gave these applications a 4.5 out of 5 rating, even though it crashed all the time on them or often on them. But that tolerance is going to lessen and it's going to go away. The same way today where they would not be tolerant coming to your website and having the website crash is the same way they're not going to be tolerant with coming to your application and having that crash. So take a look at that data, make sure you're looking at it and acting accordingly. Ultimately, your mobile application will really speak to your kind of target market, both externally and internally. So internally, we talked about making sure you understood what mobile meant for the organization and making sure you're building in accordance to that so you're not going to miss the mark. But externally, because you're building your mobile classified application with the user in mind first. User flows, user design, think in context. Think about that user. Guaranteed if you do that, you're going to do a couple of things off the bat. You'll have an app that engages, so you won't be a part of that statistic, that 1 in 4 statistic, and you're going to have an app. You're going to have an app so that people are going to want to syndicate and share with friends. So with that being said, we've come to the end, and thank you again for everybody who joined us today and got this recording, and I hope to see you on the next call. Take care.